I'm all ready to go.
Okay, this is the Zack and Skeeter Small Publisher Seminar. I am Skeeter Green. This is Zack Glazar. And the person who actually knows what we're talking about is down there on the end, Crystal Mazur.
Hello.
And today, we only have an hour, so we're going to do kind of an abbreviated seminar. We're going to start with discussing the difference between being a small publisher and being a freelancer.
Yes.
Because Crystal is the freelancer supreme. And we will go ahead and start with Mr. Zack Glazar of Frog God Games, and he's going to describe what he does when talking to freelancers, and then I will actually say the difference.
Okay. My name is Zack Glazar. I'm the COO of Frog God Games, which we are a medium-sized publisher. We produce about 40 books a year of varying some systems. We do 5e, Castles and Crusades, and OSC now. And we have about up to 44 people we work with. Most of all of them are contractors and freelancers. And I meet most of the freelancers.
That might have been my phone.
That was mine.
Okay.
I mean, most of the freelancers that I meet, I either are soliciting me on email or I meet at conventions. And I go to used to go to 12 conventions a year, I go down to 6. So it's a lot of traveling, but it's a rewarding part of my job to do that. I don't write anything anymore. I did write stuff back in the day, but I have not written anything in anger in a long time, except email. But I do often run into people who wind up being the best part of my day. Is like today I met an editor. I was so excited because we need another editor because we have so many books. And even with looking like an ugly economy and everything else, we still going to produce books. And we're happy to do so, and we do our best to get the best freelancers we can find and can afford. Mm-hmm.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. You're so good I can't afford it.
How do you know? You never made an offer.
That's true.
Okay.
Ooh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. No, so what happens, the process basically, the difference between being a small publisher is you do all the work as a one-man, woman show to make sure that you are able to get something out. You write, you type it, you put it in layout, you put your own layout, you do your own art, you buy the art. You're kind of more of a project manager than just an author. Whereas a freelancer for us is we solicit, we take actual pitches and proposals, and we turn those into books. And our best ideas are almost never our own. I'm gonna be straight up honest with that. We seldom assign projects based on, hey, I need 15 halflings and a goblin to be doing. It's mostly give us a one paragraph pitch, and then if we like it, we will go through and produce it. That's how we work with that now. And that's because of people like Crystal who have better ideas than I've had in a long time. Because I may read a lot of stuff, but I don't think it through as often as I do, and can't be everywhere all the time. And there's so many awesome parts of nerdery that have so many interesting things that can benefit from cross-pollination that we're open to submissions. And so generally we hire we don't pay as much as Wizards of the Coast does by any sense. We don't make as much money, obviously. But we do pay frequently and on time, which makes us fairly popular to work for. But we're proud of the work we do. I'm proud to work with freelancers, and honestly, anybody who ever wants to talk to me after the fact, I'm available through email and Facebook, etc. And happy to take any questions to go. But honestly, for the process, for us, is really that simple. A good idea and a history of having anything published helps, but it's not required. And if you're a freelance artist, we have a guy who does just that, and it helps you develop the art, and we have a whole process for that. I could talk about those questions, but it's very specific. And like I said, I'm excited to meet layout people, editors. There are a lot of pieces that you don't, as a fan of books, and even a pro fan, you don't realize it goes into it, and not one person can very effectively do it all the time. But like I couldn't do her job anymore at all, because it is a constant attention to the kinds of details and following trends in the industry. You can explain all the parts I'm missing here, that I can't do. So I'm using her as examples of what I can't do. What I can do, I do the business side of these things. I make sure that we don't make terrible decisions anymore. No, and I make sure that everybody gets what they need to get it done. I'm the guy who supplies the resources, not just money, art assets. I need to have somebody that knows something about Japan. Well, hey, I know a guy, right? So I'm the I know a guy. But without freelancers who are professional and willing to work and willing to take on stuff and willing to do the kinds of things that they do best, we couldn't do what we do. I wouldn't be able to do, this has been a dream to me to do this full time. I'm elves all day long, all day. Elves and dragons, that's what I mean. And I couldn't do it without the people who do that. So if anybody's interested in being a freelancer versus a small publisher, by all means. Now, if you don't want to talk to people like me, and you think people like me have no good ideas, and you want to be a self-publisher, you be your own freelancer, and that's something I'll have him talk about in a second, but that's the other route. Right? There are two routes to get the stuff that you want to see published, and those are them. So, Crystal, you want to talk a little bit about being a freelancer first?
Yeah.
And what that's like?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things about being a freelancer is that you need to be in charge of your own time. A lot of times you're given a deadline and you have to fill that space in between. So for instance, if Zach were to hire me and say, I need 10,000 words in a month, I have to make sure that I can reasonably accommodate that, okay? A lot of times, and I will say this with every ounce of my being, please don't just quit your day job thinking that you are going to be able to pay your bills, because you're not. Unless you get extremely lucky and land that position or that full-time freelance position where they are paying you a salary versus per word count, you will be struggling. And I don't ever want to put anybody's hopes up too high on the, I'm going to make it. You're going to work hard. Absolutely, you can get to a point where you would be doing that full time. And I encourage people to do that. But you have to not just throw your whole being into it and endanger your family, your livelihood, your home, or anything like that. Please don't ever try to do that. I would never encourage anybody to do that.
Yeah,
So.
the amount of full-time freelancers that can do their work and earn a living wage, few and far between.
Yep.
And you know the names of the people that can do that. It was the Monty Cooks before he wrote 3rd edition. It's Steve Winter can do that. At Greenwood, obviously, one of the best examples. I just want to touch on one thing really quick that Zach was talking about, the difference between a small publisher and a freelancer. If you think of it in the construction field, a small publisher is a general contractor. They take care of everything. They oversee everything. When the product is done, that small publisher's name is on the product. A freelancer does a part of that work. They do the writing, the editing, the layout, the art, graphic design. It can be anything. They are the specialists. Just like a doctor, there are general practitioner doctors, and there are orthopedics, because I can say that because I'm in a boot. Freelancers are the freelancers that do well focus on one thing that they do well and
keep getting better.
Is easy for them, or easier for them, and they focus on that, and then that's it. So once their part of a project is done, they're done.
Yep.
There has been a bunch of social media messages over the years where somebody will turn in something they've written, and then the company that purchases that changes it significantly, and the author gets upset. Well, that is
too bad.
I'll go over that in a second.
In an ideal world, that is written out in your original contract that once you turn in your words, you're done.
Yep.
You may get called back for rewrites or small changes, stuff like that, but the company who pays a freelancer owns the work, and you're done. A small publisher is never really done with a project. They just finish it and move on. It's one of those things like a musician. You're never done with a song, but you have to let it go. And Crystal can talk more about that part.
So the best way to think about freelancing, specifically like writing or editing, is specifically writing, actually, I'm going to talk about that right now, is that if you think about it as you are writing something and playing in someone else's sandbox. However, until they pay you, you technically own that because it's your creativity. Now, obviously there is legal, because you're going to be signing a contract. Don't ever take work where you don't sign a contract.
Nope.
But, you know, like there are other legal things to that. But until they pay you for that, it's yours. Once they pay it for you, that's it. You're done. You don't have any other connection. You may be asked to do like maybe other parts of the project if someone fell through or anything like that. But the development and everything like that is a whole other deal and a whole other world. And if you are interested in doing development work, I can absolutely talk a little bit more on that, but that's outside of more of the scope of what this panel is about.
We can take questions on it, though.
I can take questions on it, absolutely.
There's a whole additional seminar tomorrow.
There is. It's one of my
Crystal
seminars.
is putting on that she's letting me be part of, so we're going to get into that stuff tomorrow. But because we have a limited amount of time, we wanted to let you guys ask specific questions and try to address those questions with more time. We normally have 2 hours for this. We only have an hour.
Yep.
So does anybody have any specific questions they want addressed? I see eyes twitching, like looking at everybody else. So just blurt one out if you have any kind of question.
Where is the best place to find the starter set of resources that have already been collated when someone asks this question? How do I get started?
Crystal?
That's a question for her.
Yeah, so in order to get started, one of the things is I've done a lot of panels on that, and I actually decided, and this is where my panel and why we're recording today and tomorrow, is I do a tabletop RPG freelancer mentorship podcast. And the very first one is Getting Started. And it literally lists everything that you need to get started. We go over briefly programs for computers. We go over what to look for in a contract. And I go and I deep dive further into that in further episodes. So honestly, there are many different pathways into getting into freelancing. I got into it because my friend was in the industry. He needed 1,000 words or a scenario with kids for a Halloween scenario. He said, "You have a month, get it done." So I wrote it and it got published and you can purchase it. And from there, the person who did my layout ended up hiring me for Pip System. I wrote on Pip System core book. It ended up winning an Ennie, and he promoted me to lead developer in the middle of the Ennies on stage. I love telling them that.
Surprise!
It's just a surprise. I wouldn't have turned him down, but so my pathway is going to look very, very different than from other people's pathways because I had a friend, a connection already in. Sometimes you have that, sometimes you don't. Some of the ways that you can absolutely get in would be community content. I know as a creative and a developer, I look at community content for people to write on larger projects. I was hired for several different projects, including Chicago by Night, because of my community content that I put out for the launch for Storyteller's Vault. So there are things that you can do and throw out into the world that you can absolutely own a part of legally that will help get your foot in the door. And then coming to conventions, having some sort of landing space, such as a website or an email to contact, and a business card. and you go to every single publisher and you introduce yourself. And you say, I'm a freelancer, who would I talk to about submitting or your submission process? You have a conversation with them, you get their business card, give them a week because con drop is a thing, and then
It's a big thing.
It's a big thing. Google actually allows you to schedule, and I'm one of those where I'm energized after a con, so I absolutely, the day I get back, send out emails and I schedule them to go out a week later. It's great. I don't have to even think about it. I get all my energy out, and it goes out into the ether, and at the time that I said it was going to, it sends out, and then I now have my contact.
I'm stealing that idea. That's a great idea.
So,
That's a great idea.
Just one second. Crystal's online site where this would be is...
Oh, yeah, you can go...
Yeah.
Yes. So
and mine too.
I apologize. So you can go to Darker Days Radio, which is a horror podcast, and you're going to look up TTRPG FM. That's the shortened version for it, but it's the Freelancer Mentorship Podcast series. So you can find it on Darker Days. I will be putting up a link on my personal website, which is the Geeky Panda as well. But I'm terrible at updating it.
The Darker Days podcast is actually really good when you get into it.
We have a lot of stuff. We talk
really,
about like Warhammer
cool.
and World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness. We have a series called Secret Frequencies where we talk about weird, cryptidy, real life things and how to throw them into your game.
Nice.
So
It's very valuable. And Zach and I have a YouTube series on Goddamn It, Zach.
We haven't done that in a long time.
We haven't done it in a long time,
We
but
gotta
there
get on
are
that then.
a dozen or half a dozen videos that we have that is strictly small publisher seminars. So, Goddamn It, Zach, you can check that out. Question the next. Alyssa.
I've got a two-part question, and one will be for Crystal and one for you two guys. The first part of the question is, there's a lot of people who want to get into self-publishing, writing, editing, whatever it is. They want to be in the business. But do you really? Because when they actually get their first gig, weeks, months, whatever goes by, and they're just clearly not cut out for it. So one question for you, Crystal, and one part of this is, how do you recognize that in yourself, and what do you do about it? How do you overcome that? Because I think it catches a lot of people out.
Absolutely.
And on the flip side to these two fine, handsome gentlemen here, I was talking to these two guys.
Let's make sure.
Up front.
How do you recognize or mitigate, like taking someone on or engaging with someone who maybe isn't quite content?
I can answer that one.
You start, and then Crystal, and then
Well, you go the first part of the question, and I can
Yeah, do the first part.
Okay, so there's a combination of you have to have a thick skin and you have to stand your ground. I have learned that I cannot work for someone who is weak, which is like if they see me as someone who is intimidating, and they're trying to hold me back or keep me down or not let me be who I truly am and make me shrink myself down, I will absolutely not work for them. I have quit full-time jobs because of that.
Does that seriously happen?
Yes.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Oh, it's
In this world or the real world?
Yeah, both.
yes, in both. In both. I have, and so you have to recognize like the spot that you fill and what you want to fill. And then you have to recognize just how much you want to participate. I have an inflated sense of justice, and I know this, which is why I have been doing these panels and talking and sharing my experiences and being very loud about it, but in a way that I'm trying to be productive and get the message out there that I want the industry to change for the better. There are people that just don't have the spoons for that. And I recognize that. And so you have to kind of figure out what part you want to play in there. And sometimes we need a supporting class. Like I absolutely have had people message me privately of, hey, this actually happened to me too, but I cannot talk about it. I just cannot put myself out there like that. And I will absolutely first ask permission to use those stories or those examples or anything like that. but I leave their name out of it because they want to be separate from it. But I put it out there for them because I have the spoons and sometimes I have the knives. So it's one of those where you have to figure out what your place is and what you want to do and how you want to interact with it. And I know some freelancers who have no contact with social media whatsoever because they just cannot, for their own mental health, handle it. And they are absolutely successful at it, and they still have amazing careers, and they are actually at this convention currently. So there are bad aspects to the industry. There's a bad aspect to every industry. There are people that are trying to change it and that are trying to do better, and gravitate towards those people and support those people. That would be my suggestion.
And from the other side, the other spectrum of that, she's right. And actually, part of having a relationship with anybody who is providing something that's important to you, when you're making something and that you care about a great deal, especially when you start out. My very first product, I think I rewrote 18 times. Right? I cared very much about hiring the best people you can. Is so very important. You don't want to make them angry. You don't want to make them feel like devalued, so you have to pay attention. But on the flip side, the one the list brings up, we have depth to who we know. We don't have to pay. We not necessarily have to pay everybody, but I have a network of people that, okay, this artist we thought was great, and this happened more than a few times. Like, everything's great about them. They even have their own contract, they have their own book. All of a sudden you're ghosted. I just learned that term. I used it. You're ghosted.
You used it correctly too.
I know. Look at me.
Yeah.
You're so hip.
No, I'm not. But having the depth and knowing people to ask. Like, for example, if somebody was interested in doing a project that was important and had a short time frame, I would ask Skeeter Green. I would ask Crystal. I would ask people that I know, how reliable are they? And sometimes, depending on how long of a time frame you have, they have to be completely reliable. But sometimes you really want to see certain kinds of projects succeed, or you have someone has an idea that is just so good, and you know that with a little bit of listening and advice, you will get something way better. But when a business decision comes into it, it becomes a little bit harder, and that's why the networking counts so much, because we have 3 people we will talk to if we need a map, and some people will need a map tomorrow. I know who they are. I need a map 6 months from now, but it's the greatest map ever, 12 feet by 12 feet, for example. I know who that is. And there are others that we have done a few maps that are very specific for us a certain way. And they're the same with writing, same with everything else. Having depth is what we do, and we pay these people, so that's an advantage for us. But I can share that advantage with anybody who wants to know by sharing my experience and saying, hey, this is somebody who may know somebody. I've talked to Jeff Delaney, sitting right there, I'll point him out. I need a black and white artist, and I need one really quick. Who do I get? And he got me one of the best people in the industry contacted. I don't know.
You need an artist who works in black and white.
Yeah, no, exactly. I do.
Not a black and white artist.
Sure, whatever.
That sounded totally weird.
Whatever. Only you. No. No, but seriously, you mitigate that by thinking in advance and looking at like a business project. And it's really sometimes hard at the beginning, it was for me, to look at, well, this is not a business project, this is a world full of elves, and I love worlds full of elves. That's why I do what I do. But I have to pay 44 people, and late books cost money. And so the flip side of where she's at is that I try now to schedule newer people on projects I know have flexibility, so I can see new people, because new people make new things, and I love new stuff.
Yep.
Honestly. So, and go ahead.
So I have a recent example that happened in the last week of a freelancer that I have worked with for literally decades. And that person decided they did not want to communicate with me anymore on my time frame. And I had to get over the fact that I was friends with this person and fairly good friends with them at one time, and they had to go. I had to move on, and that was hard. You have a network that you build up of people, and you rely on certain people, and you create relationships with these people, and when life happens, sometimes those relationships have to change and or end, and it's tough. But if you're going to be a small publisher, you owe it to yourself to make the correct decisions for the company and for the project that you're working on. And it's hard, and if you are not the kind of person that can do that, small publishing isn't going to be for you, because people will eat you up. So, next question.
I was just going to mention that you mentioned the storytellers.
Yeah. Storyteller Vault, yeah.
Yeah, that, and there's also the storytellers. What's the one that actually does the Storytellers Collective? There's also an entryway to RPG writing as well.
So Storyteller Collective is a wonderful project. It's not community content, but what she does is she does essentially a mentorship training program where you create your own product. It originally started for DM's Guild. I don't know if she expanded upon it or not.
They're doing Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, are they doing Call of Cthulhu? That's amazing. I was a part of that launch, and I absolutely love that program. And if that is something that you are able to do and afford the time and the money, because I do believe it costs something, that is a worthwhile endeavor, because many of those people who have gone through that program are now freelancers and are putting and working on some pretty big name stuff. Like a lot of pretty big name stuff. So, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Michael.
So, Zach, you're COO of Frog Games. I'm freelancer, random freelancer number one. I walk up to you at a convention and say, I would like to work at Frog Games, or this could be any company, not just Frog Games. What do you need to see from me to know that I'm a serious candidate for being a freelancer?
Follow-up email. Honestly, follow-up's what I will get a business card, and unless I really have a burning business reason to go forward, what I'm building is I'm building a rogues gallery of people, and it's people who follow up, I'm automatically, this goes back to what Alyssa said, a follow-up to a meeting automatically makes me feel like, hey, this is somebody who's interested. And I may not need that right now, or that style of what that is, but I know people who do. One of the few things, I don't make a lot of money at this, but I collect a lot of connections. And I get people from bigger companies, smaller companies all around that, who do you know? Well, I know lots of people, and I'm impressed by people who do follow-ups. I'm even more impressed by people who will hear me say no and come back again 4 months, have a new idea. You know what? That takes moxie. It takes you believe in yourself. I believe that those things make you a better freelancer and someone I want to work with. You know, that helps a whole lot, but the follow-up for me is key. And after that, I'll tell you on an email, hey, I need a sample of one paragraph, or I need you to send it to this person for art, or hey, this is our editor and he can take a look. You know, that becomes specific and unimportant here, but the follow-up is the biggest one.
I have an example, another one here. And this ties again back to the question that Alyssa asked, whether people know that they can be a freelancer, you know, if they have it in them. I got told for 12 years that I couldn't write from somebody that I respected very much in the industry, that has a proven track record of doing things correctly. Every time I turned something in, they said, you need to do something else. This isn't for you. So I had to be like, oh my God. And I took on smaller pieces of things. If you're going to be a freelancer and an author, you don't necessarily have to churn out, 15,000 words every week to be a freelancer. I mean, if your contract calls for that, then yes, you got to do it.
If you can do that,
Yeah, call me.
You will make full-time money. I'm just
Please
saying.
give me a call if you can do 15,000 words a week. We'll talk.
But what happens is, like, if you hit a dry spell or you get writer's block, maybe you shift to, hey, I'm going to write a half a dozen spells for a game, or a dozen small encounters. Things like that keep you writing, but doesn't drain you as much as doing a fully cohesive story. And to Alyssa's question, if you are not in a position where you can do a full story, maybe you need to write the smaller chunks. That's actually how I got into Necromancer games before it became Frog God Games. I wrote trap stat blocks for 3.0 because I could do the math. Casey Christopherson was one of the main writers at that point, and he hated doing that. And he asked me, "Hey, can you do this?"
He still hates that.
And I did one, and he was like, "Hey, can you do a dozen of these?" And like next day, I was able to hand it to him. But that's how you start to gauge what your capabilities are. And as a freelancer, you need to know what your boundaries are, and then you need to be able to push yourself to push those boundaries. Because you can't stay static. You have to, it's a muscle. Writing is a muscle. And you have to keep doing it. And if you end up not doing it for several months, like I did a couple of months ago, you got to push yourself to get back into it. And then once you do, it becomes easier again. So, Alyssa, did that actually answer your
It was
question?
beautiful. It was an absolute work of art.
Oh my God.
I have one thing to add. One thing I want to add. Just one thing I want to add is that one of the useful. We talk about small publishers, freelancers. Small publisher is what you're interested in. One of the most useful things about being a small publisher is discovering what you're terrible at. Because after having to figure out what it is because you watch other people do stuff, like, well, that doesn't look so hard.
Surprise!
When you do one yourself, you learn an aspect of everything, and that really helps you identify what you're good at. Like, I can lay out books really slow. I can write super slow. But there are things that I do pretty well. There's some graphic stuff. I mean, I'm not an artist, but I'm a manipulator. But to save money, because I can't hire everybody to do everything, but identifying the places where you're weakest, you can grow into them, or you can buy them. And you know what? There is some real talent that's out there wants to actually take your money. There's not a lot of money, but it's respect money. Because then you'll feel better about cashing that check than you will anything else, in my opinion.
Yep.
That's the best feeling check you ever cashed was the first $50 Frog God gave me. I'm like, wow, someone else is giving me money for this? That's crazy. And you know what?
$50?
Yeah, it took a while. No, but in all honesty, that ability to identify what you're not good at takes you to the next step. Is like, well, who is? And that's when you start asking. So
That's how you build your network.
Yep.
Is finding out where you're lacking and then filling those holes.
yes.
I have one question for freelancing and one question for small publisher.
Crystal got the first one. Go for it.
On the freelancing side, it sounds like you're talking about everything in terms of words. I need 10,000 words. I need this.
Yeah.
But I guess in my mind, you also, if you're telling, say, a story or describing a region or whatever, part of that is, really made visible to people through the mapping. So do you also typically write 10,000 words and then put together a rough sketch map or a framework of events and things like that?
Yeah.
Or, not?
No, that's a very fantastic question. So, first, I do, most writing contracts will either do words or like pages. And pages, I think it's like 1,000
It
words.
changes all the time.
It changes all the time.
There is no good method.
But the reason why I use word count is because a lot of times books have a certain amount of word count that they can have before they start turning into bricks or personal defense weapons.
That's so
So a lot of times the publisher's like, well, we cannot have more than 200 pages in this book, otherwise it's going to be massive and we cannot produce this. And so I speak in terms of words because that's what most writers' word counts are. Writers' contracts will be word count, just because you can take how many pages you need, you can figure out the words on each page, and then you can figure out how many total words you can devote to that book. So like a full adventure, like full-on actual adventure book is going to be anywhere between 190 to 200,000 words total for that book. Anything more than that, it's going to start getting unwieldy.
Yeah.
Now, that's not including art.
1,196 pages is the absolute max you can make with library binding. Ask me how I know.
So that means that though, so you do create some like rough sketch maps or something to describe what you're writing about, or
So it depends on the writer. I generally don't, but I have in my brain like a full movie theater that I can play while I'm writing stuff out. Others will have to have that physical thing. Every writer is different. When it comes to things like art notes, is specifically what you're talking about, and map notes. Those are something different, and that goes on to the developer end. When a developer hires a writer, they want you to write the world. They don't want you to put word count into describing the art. They want you to create the things from your head, and then they take what you create and they make the art notes from that, and that's what gets sent to artists. So if you as a writer have something specific, then you want to make sure that you describe it in enough detail within the text. Now, if a developer, for instance, has art already purchased that they purchased from another book that they have a license for that they never used. This happened to me for Black Void, actually. He was like, hey, I have this art. Here are some images. Can you create monsters around some of these images instead? So it was kind of like reverse art notes where he gave me the art and then I created the monster. So with the scenario that I wrote for Black Void, that it was kind of the flip side of that. But that is absolutely something that developers can do as well, where they're like, we have stock art or we have extra art that we paid for. We want to use it. Can you create something around this?
Incorporate this.
Yes. So it goes. There's a back and forth. So writers are hired to build everything from your brain. If a writer needs to sketch out like a map or anything like that, absolutely that's fine, and you probably should send that to developer when you send in your notes, because that means that they can take that and give it to an actual map maker who can make it look pretty and publishable. So
that was the freelance question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the answer. It provided a great deal of insight.
Yeah.
On the small publisher side, it's very related to what was just said. So you've got a certain number of words for like an adventure or a book or something. What do you do in a circumstance, or what are the options of what to do in a circumstance as a small publisher when you've got a lot of great content, but you plan from maybe like, I don't know, a 300-page book, and now it's 500 and something pages.
I got this.
So what
Go, Zach, go!
All right, well, there are two options, and this just happened to us. On our second to last Kickstarter, and it was a book called Splinters of Faith, and it was done for Pathfinder originally 12 years ago. I went through personally, and I counted every page in there were 10 soft covers, right? I counted them all. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to give 20% for growth, for growing out, and then there's another adventure, I'm going to count those words too. I'm going to figure it out mathematically, laughing earlier when I said that. Mathematically, how many pages is this? 326, said Zach. It's wrong. It's 550, because I did not know how many maps were in it when I made that guess, right? And so when you have more, you really have two options. Either you don't publish them, you give away PDFs, but they aren't in the hardcover, or you suck it up. And sucked it up. We paid $12,000 more for printing on that book without raising the price on it, because it's a beautiful book. Honestly, it comes down to, are we willing to not lose money, but make less money, which we all spread around as partners. We're willing to make less money to make better books. The answer was yes.
So you don't just shrink the font, right?
We never do that anymore. Are you kidding? That's
an
a loser move.
nightmare,
We're all
actually.
old. We're all old. We're all old people, and
Yep.
honestly, the layout people we work with now, accessibility is so very important that if I even suggested such a thing, I would have to go find that out, because she'd tell people it would be true. So I'm not going to do that. No, that's really your options. Or the other option is you break in two products. This one just wasn't, the one I had in front of me was not designed for that, but I've done that before. And I've also done things like, well, this map's not going to work, so we would take a whole section out around that, and I've asked for more money, I might add. Hey, I'll use, for example, someone I just love to use, Case Gustafson. He does lots of work for us, partner. This is too damn long. Like, how am I going to trim this? What do you want me to do? And I'll take his advice, and I'll see what he says, and I'll also ask an editor, and we'll figure something out. But Frog God is not well known for short stuff. But we're working on it, Dan. We're trying real hard, because paper is 150% more expensive today than it was 6 months ago.
Yep.
And so that's a bigger consideration now than it was.
Yep.
But I like to include the author in that decision, but it's not always possible, because some of them aren't available or don't care. And because they wrote it 6 years ago. Because we have stuff on file that we've needed, we haven't got the chance to produce yet, someone quit, whatever. We're going to get to it, and we will. When we do, they don't remember writing it. I don't blame them. I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So, but there's consideration both ends, but honestly, it comes down to how much you're willing to sacrifice for cost, and we were willing to sacrifice enough for that one. So,
I got more on this one. So I have a series of small zines right now, Valley Out of Time. There are 4 of them currently printed. I have a Kickstarter going right now for parts 5 and 6. I had an idea for part 5, and as I wrote it, the idea kept going and building, and it was rich material, and I didn't want to cut any of it. And the first 4 issues varied between 20 and like 40 pages. Part 5 is like 95 pages. And when I launched the Kickstarter, I forgot to change the cover price. So it is for exactly a 95-page zine is selling for the same price as a 20-page zine. And at that point, you have to make a decision of what kind of small publisher you're going to be. Because you can put out a crap book that is financially by the numbers viable, and that will be the last book you sell. Or you can suck it up and you print that book, because once the book is printed, it's forever. And I would rather give somebody a book that they appreciate and actually use than just sits on their shelf and they look at it and say, I'll never buy anything from you again. And yeah, it's a bite and it sucks.
and my 1 sentence or 2 sentence thing here is that that's why you don't quit your job to go do this, because
Absolutely not.
you can make those kind of decisions for your artistic integrity when you're not hungry. So,
Yep.
Here, over there first,
Yep.
and then you.
In the back.
This is more for the small publisher side. You talked about how even here at this convention, you found an editor.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, freelance writers, your work is out there, especially as you start to build a reputation. You can provide samples of your work. Freelance artists, similarly. How do you find a freelance editor? And what types of qualifications would you be looking for some of those like back office technical pieces that are reliant upon working with
You go
somebody
first.
else's content?
I'm gonna let her go first real quick. From
I
that.
have a really quick one. Look at who wrote it and who was the editor listed on the cover or inside of your favorite books.
Yeah.
And start from there.
I can speak to the fact that when it comes to editors, unsung heroes are editors and layout people. Okay, they're the unsung heroes that is absolutely not possible to do any of it without those. It just really isn't. And so everybody's underpaid, but I'm a big believer that editors are the most underpaid right now. It'll change. But how do I find them? Well, when I had no money, I used my grandmother, who was a librarian and a teacher. And because that's all I could afford, and she would met my expense account, which was 0. She met that, and she did a great job. Her and I went over the whole thing, right? But as I went,
Adorable.
it's true too. I even dedicated the book to her, as you can see in my yeah. Anyway, but as I moved, forward with it, became. I met an editor because he was on my Kickstarter as a backer and had some complaints. And he's in here in the audience. He just walked in a little late, but he had some complaints, and they were legit. And he had read it, and I couldn't believe anybody read it that quickly. I released a PDF. He goes, "Oh, I have a couple of things." Like, let me have them. And I was learning how to do things, but he was giving me really good advice, and he still does. And that's how you meet the people. Kickstarter is a great platform because it brings attention to a project that otherwise would be almost impossible to show to anybody. But that's how you meet people, because people, you're showing a product, but people actually want to reach out because these are fans. We're not selling air conditioning. People need that, right? They don't need elf books, but they want elf books. They're fun. They want video games, those kinds of things. Fans want to talk to you just as much as you want to hear from them positive stuff. No, but you want to hear, and that's how I met Edwin, but that's how I met the guy today, because I have a booth, right? As I go up, the size of how many people work in our organization, I meet them differently than I did, but that's how I met the first one I worked with outside of my grandmother.
Another untapped opportunity is if you know any teachers. They are a wonderful source. If you know an English teacher, perfect editor.
You know a PE teacher, they know English teachers though.
If you're writing something that has a sci-fi twist and you know a science teacher, you can drop enough jargon in there that makes you look like you know something about sci-fi. If you have the opportunity and the teachers are available, because they're very busy.
Everything is on fire.
They are an excellent resource. I've had a number of my books edited by English teachers, and it's not 100% because they ask me, "What is this word? I've never heard this before." I'm like, oh, well.
Encumbrance.
Yeah, it's crazy things like that. They don't necessarily understand.
What's a
what
glaive
they're
cusarum?
reading, but it works out, and it's usually they're very happy to do it for reasonable rates.
Actually, I'm coming, I think, from the other side of where you're answering, because I am an English teacher, and I'm interested in getting into editing.
Well, then send me an email. I mean, that's my fastest answer to you.
Look, wait, hold on. Shine a flashlight in the corner before he hides.
Yeah, okay, so anybody who wants to be a small publisher, back corner, converge on him.
No, but
Absolutely, yeah, editors are gold.
I'm going to, just because you mentioned, I'm going to go back to what I would ask for if you actually had a resume and you're coming to me and say, I'd like to be an editor for you. Quite frankly, I'm the first one to ask, have you ever done any editing at all in gaming? And you say, no, that doesn't stop me because of it. Have you done any editing at all? I grade papers. Well, I'm already interested. Okay, I'm not super interested yet because of it. Hey, I did I did Ghost Salt Marsh. Yes, but hey, I edited 50 term papers. That's about as important, right? And if you're a gaming fan, I'm already kind of interested. I work with an editor. He's a full-time editor partner at Frog God, and I can say I'm going to hire you, but I can't tell you go through him, right? But we have in our department, but I'm already interested, and if I'm on your side because you've told me something you've done that I'm excited about, if it's term papers. I will pass along the right people. So I'm kind of like a traffic cop in a way. I make the decisions, but I don't like to make them without people who actually have a stake. So, did I answer your question better?
Yes.
Oh, you're good.
Just curious, can you give us kind of examples of the current freelance rates that you're seeing or hearing about?
As far as
Writing and editing.
for writing and editing.
For
Rates?
Yeah.
Rates. Okay.
This changes so much, and
It does change so much. So first off is never work for free.
Mm-hmm.
However, I personally, I know that there are people that don't. I do work for trade. So if I hate layout, it is not my thing. If I make community content, I need somebody to do layout for me because that meme with you insert a picture in Word and all of a sudden everything shifts. And there's a siren in the background and nuclear bombs are going up. That's me.
I'll trade you layout for words. How many words per page? I'll trade you. No.
So I will absolutely do work for trade for stuff like that. But I don't work for free. Minimum, and I'm talking minimum. And this is you have to love the project or you have to love the company is 3 cents. 10 cents is.
I'm glad. I'm more than that. Thank God.
10 cents has been the average for me for most of offers and stuff like that. I have gotten paid up to 16 cents per word, and so there is a range of things and ways for you to be able to be paid. And if a publisher goes to you and is well, we're going to give you 1 cent a word because you've never been published before, that's bullshit.
Yes, it is. Even though that would benefit me, that's BS.
I've had people who have offered me 1 cent a word after PIP system came out and Chicago by Night came out, and I'm like, so I'm not an established writer? What? So, like, there are people who will try to get away with it, call them on their bullshit every single time. Yeah, like if you're nervous about negotiating any sort of contract, remember that publishers do often have like a limit of what they can pay people too. Like, for instance, when I do my PIP system primers, we do I call batch pay. So you write me an article and I pay you $50. The articles can be anywhere between, 500 and 800 words. So it averages out to be about 4 to 5 cents a word, but that's because it's a small press. I have a very small budget for that. I have reached out to people who they are like a part of SIFWA, or their minimum is like 12 cents a word, and they do try to negotiate. And I will absolutely, as the developer for that, say, hey, I appreciate this and I understand you are valuable, and I get that. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet my budget constraints at this time. However, are you comfortable with me keeping you on for larger projects where I'm going to have more of a budget? And usually they'll say yes. But, again, I recognize value in people's work, and I recognize that people absolutely have the right to demand what they are worth. And not only is your time worth it, but your skill is too. And
from the perspective on the other side of you do the PIPs, that makes yours really handy because you understand both sides, right? For us, I'll be honest, 5 cents a word is what we generally start at and stay at. We don't increase it very often because what we do that is, I think, not unique, but really great for us, we pay on delivery. We never pay on publish. We never pay after 6 months. We don't have a 90-day hold. Mm-hmm. The day you turn in the document to me, the word count is what you get paid for. We have a payment gateway. And I am a big believer in, if you're going to write a monster book, I count STR as a word. They've seen contracts that says, well, abbreviations don't count. Oh yeah, they do. You got to type them in. They type, right? Yeah. And I am a big believer that we've done things like we pay by converters sometimes between systems by monster, and then we made sure that Edwin and I we worked where, hey, a CR10 is different than a CR half, right? So if you're interested and understand the first time it will be low, it may be lower than what I'm offering, but that's once. Honestly, I would not accept less than 3 cents a word once, but more than once. I wouldn't take a half cent a word for editing more than once either, right? But what I would take is like, I have experience, I'm happy with this. This is what I've already done. And then if they say, well, how about 4 cents? Like, I don't know. How about 4 cents and I'll pay you on delivery? Well, that's better. Yeah.
There are also things, like I'm going to call perks. Because payment on delivery is really important, because I've had projects where I'm still waiting for payment, and I've submitted it a month ago. But that's because of the wording of the contract. I understand that that's going to be a little bit later than what it is. And so, like, there are things like that. There are also things like, specifically with the Red Opera, all of the writers have the ability to buy that book at cost, which means that I can go order that book and then sell it at a con for the MSRP and make a profit.
We give ours away. Ours are free.
Yeah, and some of them are free. Like some of the publishers are like, yeah, you can order 10 books for free.
We get 3.
Sell them as many as you want. So there are other things that can be added to contracts, such as that. There are other things that can be added, like, we will own your words for 6 months. After that, those words are now yours. I've seen that as well. So there are other perks to take into consideration as well. The payment on delivery is a big one, I will say that. That is a very big perk for a lot of smaller publishers to be able to do that. So.
And one thing to remember about this whole thing and the small publishing and the freelancing is, as much as this is a hobby and a lot of this is artistic work, writing or the art or whatever, it is a business for a lot of people. And there are different small publishers are in different positions, but it is a business. It's not personal. unless that particular company decides to make it personal,
Yep.
and then that's a whole different
Yep.
subject.
That's
but,
a whole other subject.
you know,
Which you might talk about tomorrow, right?
if
I
you're
might talk
brand,
about tomorrow, yeah.
See?
if you're brand
Go to her,
new to
go
the
to her
hobby,
tomorrow.
you're not going to make big money right off the bat because nobody knows if they can rely on you. Once you build up your resume and once you get some credits under your belt, then yeah, you can push. But like Crystal's saying, don't get bullied by somebody because you're brand new.
There are bullies.
Everybody was brand new.
There are
And
bullies,
There
yep.
are
Bad bullies.
bullies and awful fucking people in this hobby. And we're
Yeah,
trying to
hobby.
get them out, and that's part of why we're doing these seminars, is to let people know that's not normal. So please don't feel like you have to get stepped on to be a part of a hobby that we love.
Of course, they're outside, so.
All right, we gotta go. Thank you very much.
Hey, I want to thank Crystal first.
Thank
and
you, Crystal.
Please attend the next seminar. Whatever, I always feel smarter when she's here, not so much him. If you have specific questions, especially about publisher stuff, I do this all day long, all the time, and I do like to help people out. Reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Zack at necromancergames.net. What time is the seminar tomorrow?
It's 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock?
It's the tabletop or TTRPG mentorship workshop. Skeeter and I are going to be talking about some of the lingo back and forth and
Good.
the lost in translation stuff and answering questions and stuff like that. And then, otherwise I do not have a booth, but I am all around the convention. Please feel free to come up, ask questions. I'll be around a little bit after the panel as well to answer questions, okay?
We're throwing Apple Tracker on you. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please reach out if you have any questions.